Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Crystals and Coffee. I have a very special guest today, Andi Scarbrough, who is the founder of Crownworks and also happens to be one of my business partners, or as she likes to call herself, a partner in shine at 𝗵𝗶𝗿𝗀𝗃 LA. And she's going to talk to us about the crystal combs that she makes and some hair rituals. And since she's been pivoting her business a lot since we've all gone into quarantine, so I'm really excited to bring her on. Andi is someone that I spend a lot of time with, and we do a lot of woo-woo things together and go on road trips. So she's a very dear friend, and she's here.
Hello.
Hello. Look what I brought for you.
I know. Look what I brought for you.
So much Virgo.
So much magic. So much magic. What's in your cup right now? Be honest.
It's not alcohol. What are you trying to say?
I mean, it's 3 o'clock there.
It is 3 o'clock here. That still might be a little early, lady. I got too many decisions to make still in my day.
All right. Well, this is so fun. I'm so glad to be here with you.
I know. I love it.
Yeah.
So I was just telling everybody how awesome you are and how I know you before you magically popped on. But I do think, Andi, before we get into it with wherever our chit chat goes,
who knows?
As it does,
who knows?
Everybody to tell people who you are and how you got here and how you made the transition from beauty back to beauty.
Beauty deeper into beauty. I know. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's a long story, lady. That's a whole nother cocktail hour. I mean, I think it's fun to start with the beginning of our story, right?
Okay.
Like you were the witch in the wardrobe, and I was an aspiring platform artist for a major hair care manufacturer. So there we were backstage at all the beauty and fashion events, and neither of us knew what kind of stuff we were really doing behind closed hotel room doors. So yeah, that was kind of, that was where I really dove deep into understanding, I mean, like, behind the scenes, like really being inside the machine of beauty. And I got to know so many hairdressers and talk to so many different kinds of beauty professionals. And it really felt like the thing that was really happening actually had very little to do with hair. Just like, in fashion, like it really, the clothes are the last thing after all the other stuff has been unpacked.
It's never about the clothes or the lashes or the hair color. It's always deeper.
It's always deeper.
Yeah.
It's always deeper. And so, as I was teaching, it really got to be that hair was just sort of like teaching a haircut or teaching an up style was kind of the thing that our hands were doing while we were talking about the other stuff. Like how to manage the emotional component of what we do behind the chair, and how beauty professionals were dealing with creative burnout and compassion fatigue, and also the wicked psychic awakening that, has been sweeping our world. And I personally believe that hairdressers are like the secret ninja squad of hands-on healers in the world. I mean, we literally have our hands up in people's crown chakras, and they are sharing with us so much of their lives. And that's just not something that we were trained in beauty school, right? Like, do you want bangs with that midlife crisis, or
Yes.
What? Right? Or what? So for me, 10 years ago, I had a personal loss that just really scrambled me. And I think most people have, their rude awakening, as it were. And I know so much of the work that you're doing is about sparing people the rude part of the awakening and letting them have a more gentle experience, which I love so much, kind of catching it before it becomes a spiritual brick being thrown at them. Yeah. But I got a brick. I got a big brick. And it just broke down all of these kind of illusions of professionalism and like being performative and the show, you know, the showmanship of hairdressing, where it's like black leather and you're flinging hair and it's, you know, champagne and like everything. Exactly. And all of that suddenly didn't mean anything. But what really mattered was this human to human connection and this ability to really tap in and serve people. And what I now say is like serving beyond the service.
Wow.
It's a big one. It's a big one.
It is a big one. Yeah, I agree with you. I think talking to yourself and other beauty professionals that are going deeper, you know, you all are the unsung heroes of the therapy world, because I mean, for me, I feel like, you know, my hairstylist and my bartender know more about me than anybody. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, hairdressers, certainly estheticians, even personal trainers, you know, anybody who's got direct physical access, because there's this thing that happens and it's not even intentional, but like when someone physically touches us, and we know energetically, like that means that we've given them permission to enter our energetic field, then there's just information that comes forward. There's ease and there's intimacy. And so often it's like, you know, shampoo becomes truth serum, and all of a sudden everything just comes pouring out. And it's such a privilege to hold that space for somebody. But again, I really found myself needing a different set of tools than my scissors and comb in order to deal with that. And that's when I started to study spiritual psychology and some, you know, earth-based shamanic style practices, and really weaving together the why of what people were really seeking when they came to a beauty service. Intimacy, connection, and also like the catharsis of release. Listen, we've all had like the breakup haircut.
Oh yeah.
Or
I think I had several.
I at least was a part of one of those. Yeah. And so, you know, it's interesting because like across cultures worldwide, everybody has recognition of the significance of our hair and our aesthetic, and whether it's the way hair is cut or styled, depending on phase of life or birth or death rituals, everybody knows that there's more going on with that. And in Western culture, we've just sort of stripped all of the ritual and the ceremony out of it. And it's become something that we've desensitized and devalued. And for me, the focus of this work is just really re-ritualizing that process and making it, really elevating it from just a self-care, you know, oil change to a sacred ritual practice.
Yeah. I have to agree. I feel the same way as you. Again, as I may have only been on the other side of the curtain from you, but models would come backstage and I'm getting them dressed. They're standing there naked, so naked. And I would hear some girl start talking about how her boyfriend beat her or something. And I'm like, oh, she's talking to me. You know, like what the fuck am I supposed to do with this? Right? Like I was just trying to get her dressed. And I think something that both you and I have, whether we wanted to explore or not, have had to somehow bridge this gap with the beauty on the inside and the beauty on the outside. And how does this go together? Because there's no word or title or box to check on the unemployment sheet for whatever we are.
Yeah.
I'm a
other
psychic, fashion, stylish, shaman, witchy, priestess, something. Like, is there a box to check for that?
Yeah, there's not.
That way?
There's not. And, you know, it's interesting because I feel like this has been the subject of many a road trip, car ride, chair session. You know, first is the very provocative question, especially early on, I kept getting asked is, what are you? Well, what are you exactly? And I love to tell the story of a very, it was kind of intense spiritual gathering that you and I went to. And there was a lot of question, like, well, where did you study? You know, who did you learn from? What's the elder you've sat with? You know, what lineage do you practice? And I was like, fuck, L'Oreal? Like, I don't know. And that I didn't know what my box was, you know, going into it. Felt really scary. And then in a very short fashion, I actually found it incredibly freeing, you know, because there's no box to check. There's also permission for us to cherry pick and weave together and collect and adapt and create really this very new thing that hasn't existed before. So there's an incredible freedom in that as well. It just fucking sucks right now when we're trying to fit into, you know, a government spreadsheet that never accounted for us in the first place, and certainly doesn't account for the level of innovation that we've created now.
Well, there's no, you know what, when I was looking at the unemployment stuff, there's no box for even like wellness person, life coach, like anything that even loosely falls into our umbrella. There's nothing. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm just noticing this. This is interesting. It's the same way though. I remember, you know, 10 or 15 years ago when you have to fill out a form for whatever it was. And I'm like, I'm a freelance consultant, and people would look at you like, what's that?
Totally.
There's no box for that. And here we are again. And, you know, I think it's interesting because we're really being confronted with how outdated and archaic so many of these systems are. You know, just like the thing that we're seeing is the paperwork, right? The form to fill out. Yeah. Just like the thing people see is the hair color or the fashion. And there's like a whole kaleidoscope world behind it. One of the things that's really come present for me is some perspective in that. I've had some time to watch some TV lately. And if you haven't seen the show Self-Made, about 𝗵𝗶cie 𝗀𝗧, who was the first female millionaire in the country, made hair product. I've got goosebumps. I think that it was not long ago that like we couldn't get a bank account without a man, you know? So there's so much that feels like it's rushing into update. And this is kind of the giant clusterfuck of all of that coming to a head. And we're realizing how many holes and divots there have been in the system. And that there's a place for gratitude in that for me, of really just appreciating how far we've come. I mean, you and I joke about it, but like, hey, at least this time we're not getting burned at the stake. So maybe we need to figure out another way to answer the government forms. But there is an enormous amount of perspective that I'm having simultaneously about the progress and the freedom that we've been afforded to practice and create. Somebody said, yeah, we've come so far in the last 100 years. So much. So it's frustrating. And also it's giving me a huge dose of perspective. I get a lot of, as you know, Andi, because you're around me all the time, and share workspace and all space with me. Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of the healer archetype in my practice. And, you know, women, whether it's from this life or another life, still carrying that energetic imprint of, well, if I speak my truth, I will die for it. I will be punished. I will be sent out of this community. I will be shamed. I will be stoned. Yeah. And, you know, a lot of my work has, through my own experience, because I was that girl, you know, the quiet girl that never talked in shaman school, to what I'm doing now, which couldn't be more different, of helping women get up on their soapbox and speak about whatever they need to within this kind of fashion and beauty realm.
Yeah, it's huge to understand, again, like how far we've come, and that is still very much in our cellular memory and our physical memory. it's so interesting just observing in the last few years how much of that like feminine wound has been coming up for clearing in the Me Too movement. And then personally, I know so many women, myself included, in the last couple of years that have had some really weird, like phantom style, like female health, womb related issues.
Yeah.
And so all of this, I feel like, is just getting power washed out of us right now. And this is quite literally the rebirth. But I always joke, like, everybody wants to be the phoenix, but nobody wants to burn up all the way.
That's right.
And this is the part where it really has to like die all the way. And there are pieces of this, you know, we've been saying like down with the patriarchy for 100 years. But we didn't realize, I think, that some of those pieces kind of worked for us, like government forms, you know? And so that's part of another thing that we're having to let go, even some of these precious parts of our dis-ease in order to really fully heal and become empowered. But to your point, I think that this is why bridging these worlds first in things that are like beauty and fashion, I really do, Colleen. I feel like we are the front lines infantry troops, like pushing this forward, first of all, because this is something that's accessible. It reaches everybody. Everybody does it. Everybody has some kind of routine. Even if your routine is not to have a routine, like you have some piece of doing it. And it's an easy way to start to reintroduce ritual and meaning and intuition and listening to our bodies in a way that is safe, is digestible, and is easy to practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually saw her, 𝗁𝗂𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, who is our third partner
at
𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗀 LA. And, you know, I think it, based on everything that we're saying, like, how do we show up this way? How do we have this conversation? Who do we have it with? Where do we go? Like, there's no place to do this. And the three of us have formed this thing where we invite people in to experience intuitive days of beauty, whether they're there to actually have the service or to train with one of us. And, you know, I think it's interesting. So Andi also owns another salon, the big salon in Santa Monica called 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗿 on Pico. And then we have our little 4-room crystal cave also in Santa Monica. But it's interesting because, you know, I think maybe, because I know there's actually so many hairstylists listening, you know, why did you choose to move that piece of the practice out of the salon?
That's a great question. And I actually got someone that sent me a message this morning asking some questions about that. In a way, I have and I haven't. It was sort of like I needed a place to graduate to, both for myself and for my clients. I still do this work. I mean, if you've been into 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗿, if anybody's been into 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗿, there's giant pillars of crystals in the windows. There's cards everywhere. We've got a whole wall of essential oils and an army of plant allies in there. So it very much is a sacred space. I mean, we like have literally mopped the floor with holy water in there. And that's like phase 1. So that's a place where people can come and start to just be curious about it. And maybe their introduction to holistic well-being is adding an essential oil to a steamed towel and laying in the shampoo bowl with that, and then talking about how that makes them feel. It's like turning the water on with a trickle, which again is like safe. It's easy. It can be fun and playful. It's invitational. It also allows the stylist, you know, some different tools to tap into what may really be motivating that like pixie cut, you know, all of a sudden. I found for me that was great for a while. And then I started to like run long with my appointments and get into trouble just with timing and managing all the pieces that I wanted to offer my clients one-on-one. And so then I started to come in and see clients on Mondays when the salon was closed so that I had more time to dive in deeper with them. And you know, gosh, you know how it is. Like, I never know what's going to come up. People say, what do I expect in a treatment? I'm like, I don't know. You might just feel really relaxed. You might see some nice colors, might have a dead relative come in, may wind up like hands and knees on the floor screaming like a banshee. Like,
wouldn't be the first time.
I don't really know. Let's find out. So the front of the salon is all windows. And there were a couple of times where somebody I felt really getting into a deep process and stopping themselves. And I realized that I needed a more protected, private space in order to really go as deep with a client as they felt like they were ready to go. So having the separate container of the Crystal Cave just gave me a new container to grow in.
Yeah. If I may, I'll tell you something that comes up for me. So I try and be a good host. And when people wander into the Crystal Cave or aren't my client, or actually are my client, or like, what is this place? And I'm giving them the tour, and we stop by Julie's Zen Den room, and I talk about this is where the energetic facials happen, and we have our tea room where you can sit and relax. And I get back to your room, and you know, I started explaining, I'm like, well, she does ritual haircuts, but sometimes she doesn't even cut your hair. And I said, but I want you to think about this idea of the private haircut. And I think you and I had talked about that it's like, well, there's not another blow dryer going. There's not other noises or things happening. And then it turns into this conversation about, well, you know, facials, like with Julie, massage, traditional therapy. Why is all this done in a closed room with a practitioner and hair isn't? And I haven't seen this done except for one other time. And as you know, I've been around a lot of hairstylists and beauty professionals my entire career. There was a salon called 𝗵𝗶𝗿-𝗫 that was uptown in Manhattan, and it's huge. It's 2 or 3 floors, like mega salon. They have everything in there. And I remember I was in there one time working with somebody on a meeting, and I saw someone open a door, and I saw a woman in there, and I was like, what's going on in there? And they said, oh, that's the room for Muslim women and Jewish women. And, you know, so that they can have follow according to their beliefs and have the private time they need. And I was just like, this is fucking awesome. And then I started to think, I was like, well, why doesn't everybody get a private haircut? Because people cry, they say crazy shit, you know, and there's all this open space around it. Like, Andi, what you're doing in the hair industry, how's that going to ripple through, you know?
That's a great point. I actually remember a time 10 or 12 years ago now where I had a Muslim woman client come in who wanted a service, and I actually didn't have a private space to see her in. And it was really troubling for me. Yeah. What I wound up doing was coming in after hours so that she had a private experience. But it's interesting too, because again, in that performative way that the beauty industry has been created, so much of it is like, you want fishbowl windows. You know, for a long time, it was like banned. The highest performing stylist got first chair, got put in front of the window because we wanted to look, you know, busy. And there have been some huge changes, you know, salon suites and things like that. So the private individuated salon setting has become incredibly popular. But even at that, most of those have outward facing windows, or even windows that are open into the hallways of the units. So I think that there's a massive tidal wave shift there. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I was in one of those before we opened Framed, and my business partner, Stacey Ray Barnes, and she was in one too. We just missed each other. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the other piece, is that we're such a social foundation. Like, it's not just a hair salon for beauty. Again, it's not just the one-on-one treatment that's happening with the stylist. Like, salons and barbershops have been cornerstones of the community. So it's also a place to gather. Like, think about salon is a gathering place. And so we stand as little slices of community. And it's one of my favorite things in the world, where stylists will, like, the chairs will turn around all facing the middle, and 2 or 3 clients maybe having a conversation and like renting an apartment or selling a car or, you know, hooking somebody up with a date. So there's a community piece of that also gets fed. I think what's happening more and more, is that salons are having both. They're having that community factor, and then there may be 1 or 2 private suites that will allow for whatever kind of deeper or more personal experience that you can have. Mine just happens to be in 2 locations.
Yeah, I like it. I want to talk about something, and I know you were telling me that there was a lot of opinion about, so yes. Yeah, we're gonna talk about it. So
now I'm sad that there's just tea in my cup.
That's been listening. This is what an average car ride with Andi and I entail, whether we're going across LA or out to the desert. And I have to tell you, the ride to the Tucson Gem Show this year was it was pretty fucking thick in there the whole way.
I know, we like hotbox a car just with lots of big feelings and thoughts.
So to give a little bit of background here about this, I came home 3 weeks before quarantine started. My mother has cancer and went into a coma, and I came here to support my family. And then obviously all this stuff started to unfold with Corona. And so I text Andi and I said, I'm in a fucking place. I was like, my hair looks like shit, and I do a lot of public work, whether it's Instagram or public events or meetings or whatever it is. And I had this, line down the middle of my head, and I felt bad. And so I had asked Andi, I said, is there anything you can do for me? And so she sent color to me, and we couldn't do highlights, but she at least could cover, do the base. Any hairstylist listening, I'm listening to what you guys tell me. Do the base,
using all the lingo,
do the regrowth. And so I was obviously so grateful and felt so good. I got on and did a huge Instagram post about what had happened in this box that you sent me, and I did it at home, and you walked me through it on Zoom and all this stuff. And it was really interesting because what we're going to talk about right now is the opinions, whether they were applauding Andi for sending me this brush and the tools to take this into my own hands while we're locked up, or they were really going after Andi because they didn't think it was right that you were doing this. And so I kind of want to talk about it because, again, I'm not a hairstylist. I was getting so many DMs from hairstylists, like asking for your number. How do I get a hold of you? I was giving out your number to people that aren't even clients. Like my sister, who's in New York running a pharmacy right now in Brooklyn. She's one of the only businesses open. I gave her your number. I mean, I was just like, hey, there's this girl. She's got hair color and she'll send it to you.
Oh, Lord. Now I'm like, all of a sudden the underground mafia lord of the hair color ring. It is such a big thing. It is, I mean, it's not a big thing at all. And there's so many pieces to it. First of all, fuck it. Fuck it. And like my grandma used to say, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. Listen, I think that there's a lot to be said about the place in which some of those negative comments were coming from. People are really afraid right now. And especially, I mean, this week, like the small business funding ran out. I know very few people that actually got any support for their business. And so, yeah, it's a really scary place. And salons typically, I mean, we don't run a huge profit margin, right? Framed actually runs like a co-op. So we if we didn't sell shampoo, we could file as a nonprofit. So it's not like there's some big backstock of money that is floating this. And I think people have one or two reactions in that. They either pivot and innovate and figure out a way to do something, which can come from either a place of service or from a really scary place of fear and scarcity and feel grabby. Or like they just check out altogether. So I think what was happening is there was not everybody has the access. Everybody's configuration is different. Not all supplies are open. Not all places are delivering. And so there was a little bit of like, somebody's getting something that I'm not. Somebody's able to do something that I'm not, or like you're breaking the rules. There's also so much fear about what happens on the other side of this. And this has been a huge thing in the hair color and just like in the beauty world forever. Like stylists get real fucking weird about sharing their formulas, or what has always chapped my ass throughout all my years in education is how somebody will show like a process, whether it's a color process or a haircut or an updo, but they'll like leave out a couple of chunks in the middle.
Like a cookie recipe.
Like a fucking cookie recipe, right? Like,
it's not right.
I want you to do it, but I don't want you to do it as well as I do, right? So there's a little bit of that that's still like, let me protect my position. Let me hold this kind of like piece of authority that is just really based in scarcity. So there's a lot of people that are really afraid that if their clients know how to color their own hair, they won't need them.
Which literally comes back to the other like 90% of the visit, which is the therapy appointment, the experience, the energy work, like everything that you're not getting at home.
That's right. And I'm not going to make generalizations here because, again, I think that there are a lot of different situations. I know some stylists that are in employee-based salon environments that would love to send their clients color, but they literally can't get into the stock room, right? Or they can't afford to buy color to send out. Yeah. So I think there's lots of different issues with it. But I think the scarcity piece is why it's become so bitey around it. And the truth is, like, home hair color has been a like bazillion-dollar industry for years. Yeah. Like, you walk down a color aisle, it's a whole aisle. You sent me an article that now hair color is the next panic buy.
Yes.
Which is fascinating to me. And I'd love to unpack a little bit, I think, about what some of that motivation is, but I do think that this is an important thing to address first. Yeah. So even, please.
Go ahead. Oh, there's a bee right out my window. That's Andi's spirit animal.
You know, it's funny. There was just one outside mine.
Yeah. I got distracted. I was like, oh, you know, I just want to compliment you because, to your point, and respecting every situation that every person is in, because every single person's situation is wildly different right now. That what I would love and invite people to take from this is an invitation to see somebody in beauty who pivoted their business when they had to, and to at least be inspired by what you did.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. You know, she meant it too. I mean, for me, it really just came down to service, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that there's so much more than just the hair color that's being served here. You know, people made a lot of jokes about the run on toilet paper, but the truth is that's such an intimate, vulnerable moment. And people became really afraid to not literally have their asses covered. Yeah. And
your butt is a vulnerable place, lady.
It's a vulnerable place. So to be exposed, to feel not covered in some of those like most intimate, tender moments, it's kind of the same with hair color. And I think back to our conversation about women and women's rights and all of that, you know, so many women that I know now that are leading executives, that are like big time boss ladies, that are running corporations and businesses from Zoom now, are also consciously or unconsciously aware of what will be perceived of them, either loss of power, vulnerability, or even sex appeal, if gray hair is exposed.
Yeah. Because women are looking at themselves in the mirror literally more than ever before because of Zoom calls.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too. I just watched, like I said, I've had some time. I watched the Hillary documentary on Hulu, which was great. And not in a political way at all. I just thought it was fascinating. But one of the things that she said that I thought was so curious was on her campaign trails, she totaled up the hours she spent in hair and makeup. And she spent 25 days straight of her campaign in hair and makeup. And was pissed that like the men don't have to do this.
Yeah.
Right? That's 25 days of other stuff that they got to do because she had to look a certain way, because that had, whether it's right or wrong, it's still something that's being taken into account in the way that a woman, an extra thing that a woman has to do. And I say has to, because I think that that's breaking down even more.
Yeah.
But an old demon, an old baggage that we're all still carrying and working with in whatever way we are. So I think that's a huge piece of what's moving here. And I think for me, anytime shame or judgment comes into the decision that's being made, whether we're shaming other stylists for how they're literally keeping themselves in kale and tequila, or shaming a client for not being willing to wait as if that's some kind of betrayal when we literally don't know what's happening, like waiting for fucking Godot, is just not productive. Like, that's mean.
Yeah.
And in the end, this is a service-based industry. So for me right now, the goal is, how do I serve? How do I continue to serve? How do I continue to serve? So I can't do ritual haircuts, for people that really need them right now. And I'm not talking about like, I want a new, whatever. I'm calling in my new boyfriend, which is legitimate, but like, I need to cut my hair off because I'm in cancer treatment.
Yeah.
Or, I just got out of an abusive relationship and I need to not be identifiable at this point in case he comes looking for me. Like those kinds of transformations that are still happening, even though the world is on hold. So how can I hold space for those things? And yeah, I'm going to ship your ass a box of color. Yeah. And then I'm going to FaceTime you and we're going to walk through it. And chances are it's not going to be like, I can't pack a 𝗫𝗵𝗶𝗿, up in that box. So then we're also having the opportunity to talk about like, what is that color really doing for you? Because I couldn't do your highlights, right? So you had to adjust some expectations.
Yeah.
And I just had a conversation with somebody that bummed me out. I couldn't help her. Like I couldn't send her anything that would work for her. And what we wound up doing was working a more energetic process around, what her lightness was serving her and where she could source that elsewhere. So in a way, we're stripping down past the color and getting right to the heart of what's motivating our aesthetic choices.
Yeah. It's really interesting because again, as we were talking about, so my mom's chemo started right before we went into lockdown, and Andi had told me, she said, obviously my mom's going to lose her hair. And she said, don't let it get to the point that, it's kind of falling off. Like this was before we thought we could still go outside, obviously. And you're like, take her to the salon or, be empowered by this, like make this a ritual, let your mom stand in empowerment instead of like, feeling sad, like watching all her hair fall out. And
that's right.
Of course we were all, and I'm sad I couldn't give that to my mom, but what you did do, again, from a hair therapist perspective in a really hard situation, my sister and I stood outside, we got a lawn chair out and sat my mom outside on a beautiful sunny day and we chopped all her hair off. And like, there's nothing else I can do. And it's as special as I could make it for her under the circumstances. But like, I wouldn't have had the foresight to do that. And I want to do as many things as I can for my mom.
I really love that. And I acknowledge you for that. I mean, you're coming from a place of victimhood to empowerment, right? That she gets to have an active choice where so much, and that's another piece, right? For so many of us, your mom most pointedly right now has so many of her usual choices taken away. And so many of us have so many of our usual choices taken away. So where there is an opportunity to claim our power or make a choice or be in command, especially of our own physical autonomy and the way that that is adorned or not, feels so important. Like it feels like there's a real core piece of taking back our physical autonomy in making some of these choices.
Yeah. So again, it wasn't about the haircut, but like you were empowering me with information or things that I didn't think about in that situation. And to be honest, that's because I haven't had to or had to care for a cancer patient in that way intimately before. I've seen people that way in session, but not in this way. And you see cancer patients all the time, right? So, bringing that wisdom to the table in a moment like this as a teacher, I wouldn't have thought to do that.
I think it's an important note to understand that while again, all of the suffering is relative and all of the loss is relative, it's all real at the degree in which people are experiencing it right now.
Yeah.
And most definitely, so many of us, and I love you and Julie talked about this too, are experiencing a real identity death. Who am I if I'm not? And to be able to understand that that's what's moving in this. So like, don't shame somebody for cutting their bangs. Like, do it. I will get on FaceTime. I will climb up on that bathroom sink with you. You can put me on the mirror, get out a pocket knife, get out kitchen scissors. We will work with what you got. Yeah. But if you feel like that's how you need to process this right now, hair is a renewable resource, y'all. It will grow back.
And Andi is here to do your corrective color when you took matters into your own hands and got a fucking box dye and did what you did.
No shame. Maybe a long color appointment afterwards, but no shame. Well, it's interesting too, because this may be, I don't know, this may be sort of bad for business to say, but I'm really curious as to what people, like we're having some hardcore habits that are just being broken right now. And the things that we've been doing on autopilot simply because it's the thing that we always do is being scrambled. So I personally hope that there are more women that choose to embrace their gray hair, and that some of the work that I'm doing over the rest of this year and the next is about incorporating more of their natural color or easing them into something that feels more celebratory rather than camouflaging. Color that makes them feel more themselves rather than like something else or not a certain way.
Yeah.
I think that this is a huge invitation for that. And I'm really, truly just curious to see what that looks like. I've seen several people that I know and respect just like literally go buzz cut or crop cut at home and be like, fuck it. This is the time where I'm going to start growing out my gray hair. I'm into it. I think it's amazing. And I think it's a great big, like, to the man. And then, fucking color it pink, right? Like do whatever you want with it, but do it from a place that is affirming your life and your self-expression and your individuality rather than hiding in what's being expected of you. And even that is really confrontational work because, sometimes people sit down and they don't know what's moving for them. They know they want something, but they don't know what.
Yeah.
So having the tools and the ability and the work that you're doing in the way that you've pivoted your business to create more opportunities for people to start to poke around in there inwardly through your moon circles and more one-on-one work and these conversations. just to let people kind of get curious about what they actually may want outside of what's expected of them.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's been really interesting. I've always offered distance sessions because, as you know, I see clients worldwide. So that wasn't, the Zoom call was no new thing for me. However, what has been new, and again, you know, okay, I'm like, okay, I have to pivot my business. I'm like extra stuck inside because I'm taking care of my mom 24 hours a day. And, you know, what was kind of surfacing, a couple people reached out and they're like, we had to cancel because I was supposed to go to like a bachelorette party and do crystal readings or somebody's birthday party or whatever. And so we're pivoting the business and I'm doing it via Zoom, and everybody else is getting on Zoom and they get their little crystal care package in the mail after the party or before, whatever's happening. We're gonna adjust and curate as we go. But there's been these new channels of opportunity that have opened up, and I've been, you know, this is week 10 of me living in my childhood bedroom. And
we can't, like, that's a whole thing to even get into right there.
That's right. I mean, and a sidebar, the greatest thing I found was my 𝗁𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 New Kids on the Block tour t-shirt from like 1989 type of like first concert, like 10 or whatever I was.
Well, she's going down memory lane.
I am like wearing that 𝗁𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 t-shirt because I felt good because I still fit in it. And then I was also like, what's been a breath of fresh air is being confined here in my old house with my parents. And I've never felt so free and creative in my life being in my former bedroom.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Feeling again, like 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, like back to the place where you were becoming again.
Totally.
I love that.
Yeah.
I want to go off on another tangent, but I just saw somebody commenting about like they're getting their hair colored now, so no grays. And I want to be really clear that there's no judgment about anybody coloring or not coloring. Just like in the healing work that we do, like I'm not here to force anybody into a new line of thought. It's just the invitation into a query as to why, like, why are you making the choice that you're making?
So, you know, regrettably, one of the items I did not bring on this, this long visit I'm on, this long teachery, full of wisdom visit, is my crystal comb.
Oh, the comb.
And I was wondering, do you have one close? Like, can we talk about the comb for a minute? Because anybody that was watching the other day, our partner at the Crystal Cave, 𝗁𝗵𝗂𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 I have it close. Teaching people how to do gua sha, whether they have a gua sha tool. I had this crystal.
Yeah.
And then a couple people on there were saying,
I was
could
using
I use
the comb.
my gem comb and rub my face out? And Julie said yes.
Oh, I was watching you guys like, oh, yeah. See, look, I've studied. I've practiced. Julie, you should be so proud of me.
But
yeah, I actually loved what she talked about in using the serrated edges for wrinkles. So girl, you know, I was watching that Hillary documentary, like up in them forehead lines. Yeah, the combs are great. And the beautiful thing about the combs is that they were actually created for people to have the opportunity to provide that same kind of catharsis and self-care and ritual for themselves. So what had happened was, I had started to do the treatments in the salon, getting into deeper treatments. Oh, somebody's using the comb in the beard.
It's 𝗁𝗵𝗏.
Oh, that's 𝗁𝗵𝗏.
He's got the beard. That is the test market if I've ever seen one.
That's amazing. He does have an epic beard. I'm considering how to customize for that. So stand by, 𝗁𝗵𝗏. You will be my test audience. Yeah. So first of all, I wanted a tool as a professional that I could use, just like when I started doing dry hair cutting, clients thought like, they're like, oh God, well, is she running late? Like, is something wrong with this appointment? She's cutting my hair dry. And so for me to have a dedicated pair of dry cutting shears, let them know that this was actually something different that was happening and something that I took seriously enough to invest in a dedicated tool for it. Yeah. And then what had happened was I started getting into this and people were like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. When can I come back and get another haircut? Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh shit, this is going to like escalate if I don't figure something out. Yeah. So what I realized was that it was really about the nurturing act. And just like a chiropractor is going to give you an adjustment and then they're going to say, hey, you need to sleep a little differently. You need to do these exercises in between to make sure that your back doesn't get out of alignment again. The comb became an at-home tool for them to continue on maintaining the energetic alignment and the self-care and the ritual processes and some of the spiritual exercises that we had created together on their own. So it became their home care, just like you get a deep conditioner when you leave the salon.
Yeah. So I feel very blessed. I had one of Andi's first prototypes and I got to take her for a test drive.
You did.
And what was interesting for me, because again, it wasn't even about the tool, even though it's amazing. I had it before I started writing my book and I was using it and I'm loving it. And then, I got in the weeds with writing. I was traveling all over the world. I'm interviewing people, like working 24 hours a day to do this book. And after I turned in my manuscript to HarperCollins, I realized that comb had been gathering dust in my shower. And it was this, like, I was ashamed. It was this huge lesson to me that I had let my self-care practices go to the wayside so badly that I wasn't giving myself 2 extra minutes in the shower to, again, my ritual with it is I put conditioner in my hair and then I just keep combing through any energy that is not mine or of my highest and greatest good, get out, be absorbed, go down through the water, go into the earth. And that's kind of my ritual. And I was just like, I couldn't believe that, especially working in wellness, I had allowed that to happen. And that little comb was sitting there, being this big, bright teacher to me to,
like, hey,
don't fall off your fucking self-care game because it's so important. Said my piece.
I love that. I mean, I love that sharing too. And I remember when you had that aha moment and you came in and you really, like, it was a very emotional experience for you to realize how that had become kind of a telltale sign of, if I may be so bold, like a level of self-abandonment.
Oh yeah.
That you had experienced in that. And I think, for so many of us, we feel like, it's like the gym or anything, right? Unless I can go and spend an hour and a half and do 40 minutes of cardio or do whatever, then it's just not worth it. Or if you're me, if I have toast for breakfast, fuck it, I'll have a funnel cake for lunch. So wherever that degree falls for you. When the truth is the 5 minutes that you had dedicated yourself, again, like tacking it onto something you were already doing. And I'm a big fan of the crystal combs, but just having that intention when you shower anyway, to take that 2 or 3 minutes while you're washing your hair. Hair is said to be our antenna to spirit. It's literally like the place where our physical being and our ethereal being merge. So there's this kind of watery, flowy element with it, and it catches a lot of stuff. So the way that we ritualize how we style our hair, wearing it up if we're going to go into some like chaotic emotional situation, or even the way that we ritually wash it can be a beautiful ritual just by itself. So for me, the invitation for the comb came to, how do I have this like a reminder? So mine sits on my bedside table. And every night before I go to bed, same kind of thing. I go through and I do a little scalp massage with it, do a little nice breathwork meditation. Not only is it good for the scalp and stimulating the scalp circulation, increasing growth, the energetic properties of whatever stone that you're working with. I've been, funny enough, like Julie, I've been really into clear quartz lately. It feels like, Yeah, well, and also purifier, right?
Yeah.
So just all like tune to the crown, but clear everything, just a nice energetic wash every night. So it's serving all of that, but it's also activating the parasympathetic nervous system, working with our scalp specifically. There's so many energy lines and so many meridians that connect in through here that working just a few minutes on a regular basis, and I'm not even going to go so far as to say every night, like once a week is fantastic, can do a lot to help to rehabilitate and recalibrate your nervous system.
Yeah. Yeah. Woof. So, Live's going to kick us off in a few minutes.
Okay.
So if you have any last words, and everybody on here literally just, as I said, witness what a typical car ride with Andi and I is like, swear to God.
I mean, like 𝗵𝗶𝗿, right?
We just sit in the car and give it to each other the whole way from the west side to the east side.
That's so true. Well, and there's so much more that I would love to talk about.
Yeah.
Maybe we do it again, and how it's translating, working more remotely versus working hands-on. That's been a stretch for me, like a new muscle to flex into in sending my energy out versus working hands-on. But one thing I did want to share are some fun at-home rituals. And I made a post on my Instagram today about that. So just some like kitchen witching with some regular ingredients that you've got, whether it's using an olive oil or an avocado oil and some flowers to infuse your own hair treatment. I personally am going to get into a little action with some coconut milk later. I'm very excited about this. So these are beautiful. The combs are incredible to work with those ingredients, but also a brush. This is the ritual brush from Roxy Jane Hunt, or even your own little hands. But applying some loving intention to that crown goes a long way right now.
Yeah, we'll get you back on. And, it was unfortunate because I had Julie on with me the other day, and, we were making a joke. I was like, IG Live won't let us do a threesome. I wish they would, because we could completely be hosting this amazing little episode on how to do intuitive beauty. But hopefully in the future.
maybe we need to take that into more of a Zoom format.
I think we do. Yeah.
If that's something y'all are interested in, then send us a note and let us know what you'd like that to look like, and we'll see about making that magic happen.
The three of us could do a workshop together.
That'd be really fun.
Well, again, this is Andi Scarbrough of Crownworks and mother of the crystal combs, the hair revivalist. And I want to thank you, Andi, for giving me your time. And I need you to send me some more hair color.
You got it. And probably a comb. I can't believe you're there without one.
I am going without a comb again. This was,
not the time for
so then we can get on and comb together.
I got you, girl.
Okay.
I love you.
I love you. Bye.
Bye.